I'm Melissa Chartrand. I'm joined by Lauren Wolk, Associate Director of the Cultural Center of Cape Cod, and we are in a room that happens to have an exhibit of your assemblages, am I saying that correctly? But we're not going to talk to you about the Cultural Center and your role there. I could probably take the entire time of this interview just saying all the different things that you do. Novelist, artist, poet, visual artist, writer, associate director, not to mention mom, wife, and a million other things, Lauren. I don't have time to even barely brush my teeth and get dressed in the morning. I don't know how you have time to do everything that you do and do it so remarkably well.
Well, it's a lot of getting up at 5 and going to bed at midnight. It's a lot of juggling. It's also a lot of telling myself, reminding myself. I spent a lot of years at home raising my kids and doing a lot of different things at home. But now that I'm out in the world and have been for some years, I feel this great need and excitement about jumping into whatever comes my way. So this piece, for instance, I was invited to be in the All About 7 show at the museum in the spring. And of course I said yes. Bob's always saying, Bob Nash, my boss, you got to learn to say no. But I have a hard time doing that. And not only no to people who invite me to do great things, but no to the stories in my head or no to the art that wants to be made. I have no interest in saying no. It's too much fun to say yes. So I just find the time.
There you go. And do you find the time to not only do this type of creative work, but writing? I want to talk about Lauren Wolk, the writer.
Right. And you know, I always thought of myself mostly as a writer. I didn't start making visual art until I was probably in late 30s or so. It never occurred to me that I would make art. Never. Which is why I always tell people, you don't know what surprises are waiting for you, what gifts you have inside that you have to unlid. Because it was a huge surprise to me and it's been a wonderful part of my life. But I've been a writer since I was a child, both poetry and fiction. I don't write much nonfiction, although I write grant proposals. Those are definitely nonfiction. And I have worked in publishing in various ways. I've written a lot of articles for magazines and things, but fiction and poetry are my love. So I wrote one novel, which was published by Random House in 1999. I wrote another one after that, after working at Sturgis Charter School, about being a teacher and other things, which awaits publication. And then I wrote one last spring called Wolf Hollow. And it turns out it's a young adult novel, which I did not expect, didn't write it that way. But it's told from the perspective of an 11-year-old girl in 1943, so it's quite naturally perceived as a young adult novel. And it will be published by Dutton Penguin Random House in the US in 2016 and around the world by other publishers.
What a thrill. And you'll be with that. Well, let's go back to, you said you've been writing since a child. So what were it just came naturally? What was your upbringing like that lent you to that?
Well, both my parents write and are involved in the arts and in education. So I was surrounded by all kinds of things cultural. But I think you're born with something. And but like I said, you don't always know you have something until it's brought out. So things were encouraged. Writing was always encouraged in my house. And in my schools, I had some very good teachers. And so once I started to write and I realized I was good at it, when you're good at something, there's a certain excitement and confidence in that. And then learning to be better and better at it as I grew up was also exhilarating, and being in the company of other writers has always been wonderful. So it's just a very, very strong part of my life.
Take us through the creative process a bit. Do you have these stories in your head? Do the people you meet become the characters? What makes you decide?
That's a good question.
Where to begin?
It's a very good question. It's a combination of things. This latest book, Wolf Hollow, was inspired by my mother's childhood on a farm in western Pennsylvania. So a lot of it is true in the sense that that farm does exist and that part of the world does exist. But the rest of it is fiction. I never start with a plot. I always start with a place, and I always start with a person, sometimes more than one person. But I never want to know what's going to happen. I never want to know what's coming, because then it feels like work. I just want my characters to take me on an adventure. And Annabelle, the little girl in this novel I just finished in the spring, was a great leader. It took 3 months to write, because every time I sat down at the computer, she was waiting right there at a path in the woods with something going on in her life. And it was just an incredible experience. So my next one I have forming in my head, little boy, I won't say any more than
I was
that.
going to say, what? Tell us.
But I really want to wrap Annabelle up first, and I've just sent my first revisions into my editor, and hopefully my last revisions into my editor. But that's a creative process too. The revision process is very creative, and once we put that to bed, I just can't wait to dive in with a new one.
What a thrill. And then you mentioned being able to travel. Do you do to publicize the books? What's your role in that?
Well, that's going to be interesting. So I have a publisher in the UK, that's Penguin Random House UK. I have a publisher in Italy, a publisher in Brazil, and I just got a publisher in Germany, and apparently there may be others. So my dream is that their budget has in it a line item, promotional tour by author, and that they will be able to send me on a tour. Because UK doesn't just mean the British Isles, it means Malaysia, it means Australia. But whether it's in the budget or not, I'm saving my pennies and my mileage points so that hopefully I can see Italy for the first time and Australia for the first time. I've been to the British Isles and I'd go again in a heartbeat. But just, travel is bread and butter to creative people, really to all people, I think, who are interested in learning more about themselves and the world. There's nothing like it.
No, there is nothing like that. And then who knows what your next set of novels will be after those trips.
Right.
Now, what advice do you have? I read where sometimes writing can be isolating. I mean, certainly you're involved in so many different things and have other creative outlets that if there were writer's block or some sort of issue, you have something else to turn to. What's your recommendation to other?
Embrace the isolation. Have plenty to do outside of that zone you go in when you're writing. And I do. I'm with people all the time, wonderful people. When I sit down at the computer to write, and I do write on the computer most of the time, although not poetry, but when I'm writing prose, I sit down at that computer, usually first thing in the morning in my pajamas, and 8 hours can go by and I'm unaware of it. You get into this world. You are transported, and it's so invigorating that being interrupted, it's hard. It's very, very, very difficult. I used to sometimes write in my car or somewhere when my kids were little. Now I have a certain cone of silence around me most of the time, but the phone ringing, you just want to destroy the phone. You just want to block out the rest of the world. But I don't mind the isolation. It's the only way I can write. And you just have to have something to balance that out in your life.
Sure.
You have to have people waiting once you're out of that zone.
And you do, and you've done so well. Let's let our viewers know where they can find out more information about you, Lauren, and where you can get these books. And
I have a website, laurenwolk.com, and it has information about everything, including my job and my artwork and my writing and my family. My book, my first one, Those Who Favor Fire, it should be in pretty much every library. You can still order it online from Amazon. It's still being published by Random House in paperback. The new one, 2016, it should be everywhere. It should be. I've learned not to count any chickens, but from the way things have been going, I have a feeling it will be out there and around.
But then the next step would be a screenplay.
Yes, I am beyond excited about that possibility. I love movies, I love good films, and I know my agent has talked about having had a conversation, one so far, with potentially interested people. Let's put it like that and leave it at that. But yeah, the words are the important thing. The words, the book, and everything else is just gravy. It's just lovely, the prospect of being able to learn new things, how to make a movie.
Absolutely. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for your time today.